right, welcome everybody to our May Zero Waste Task Force meeting. Tonight, in honor of Compost Awareness Month, we are doing a virtual field trip around Westchester County to see how communities compost their food scraps, and for those of us that do compost our food scraps, where does it go and what happens to it that actually turns it into compost. So feel free to introduce yourself in the chat, include your name, your organization, where you are joining us from. And our icebreaker for tonight is, what is your favorite spring event? There are so many happening right now. And we still have people joining from the chat, so we'll give it one more second. Thanks so much, everybody, joining us for our virtual field trip. Introduce yourself in the chat. Feel free to share your icebreaker. What is your favorite spring event? All right, so I think that I will go ahead and get started. Welcome. My name is Courtney Williams. I am the founder of WAS, Westchester Alliance for Sustainable Solutions. WAS is an alliance of community organizations from Westchester County working to close the Wheelabrator Westchester Trash Incinerator operated by Wind Waste Innovations, which is located in Peekskill, where Westchester County burns its garbage. This is our agenda for tonight. It's packed, but I'm confident we'll get through it. And actually, I guess number 2 is at the bottom, but I wanted to welcome you all. I'll do a little bit of background and intro on food scraps recycling in Westchester. Then I'll show you Peekskill's just opened last week, 24/7, 365 drop-off location. Then we're going to hear from our neighbors in Cortland, who are working towards curbside food scraps recycling, with Supervisor Becker is here with us, and Kathleen Walkup from Mothers Out Front. Then we will go to Yonkers to see how Greystone Apartments composts their waste and does curbside pickup there with Sue. And then we'll go to Cortland with Anthony Carbone to see, once all of those food scraps are picked up, where do they go and what happens to them to turn them into compost. And then we'll have our usual community discussion and Q&A. And then, of course, we'll take action. So with that, this is from the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation, showing what we throw away. MSW is municipal solid waste. And what you can see, one in a pie chart and one in a handy graphic, is that about 17% of what we throw away are food scraps. And food scraps are wet and they're heavy, and our municipalities pay by weight for what we drop at the incinerator. So that really adds up. And it's super expensive. So this graphic is from the Institutes for Self-Reliance, looking at data, look at the cost per ton of burning on the right-hand side from Hennepin County, Minnesota, burning your organics or composting your organics. So I believe organics, they include yard waste there. So you can see a tremendous amount of savings per ton. And so for Hennepin County, it was over like $6.5 million could be saved by composting their organics instead of burning them in the trash incinerator. And this is from Larchmont from a couple years ago when they announced their program, their curbside food scraps recycling, or sorry, not curbside, but their food scraps program. Because Westchester County, they call it the RFSTAD, the Residential Food Scrap Transportation and Disposal Program. And it's countywide to divert those food scraps from the incinerator. And what Mamaroneck and Larchmont were finding was that it was saving them 1/3 to 1/2 the cost of taking that same material to the trash incinerator. So that was their estimate from 2022. I can only assume the incinerator's gotten more expensive since then. But keep in mind, in addition to not the cost, you also have the environmental impacts. So at the end of trash incineration is toxic ash. So on the left is the Frit Pit in Sprout Brook Park. So you can see the ball field and the playground there in the foreground. That big mountain you see in the back is a 4 million ton mountain of toxic ash, which is the first 4 million tons of ash from Wheelabrator Incinerator in Peekskill that was hauled and dumped there in Peekskill's watershed. They call it Sprout Brook Park because at the base of that mountain of toxic ash is the Sprout Brook that feeds into our watershed. And then on the right is a picture from the Boston Globe of a massive ash dump in Saugus, Massachusetts. So before it's capped, that's what it looks like. So we can either turn our food scraps into compost for our garden, or we can turn it into a mountain of toxic ash. And I think we can all agree, much better for our vegetable garden than for our playgrounds. But on top of that, food scraps is kind of a climate double whammy. So already trash incineration produces a lot of greenhouse gas emissions. But what a lot of people don't realize is wet stuff like food does not burn well, right? So how do you get stuff burning in an incinerator, and how do you keep wet stuff on fire? Natural gas. And I had to search really far and wide to find a graphic of trash incineration that included the gas on it. They leave that off. But it is fracked gas that feeds the incinerator to help it get started. And then when it's very wet and a lot of heavy wet garbage like food scraps, or if it's been raining or something like that, they need to feed in more natural gas to keep it going. So you've got the fracking and you've got the emissions from trash incineration. But dumping organics in a landfill is bad too, because organics in a landfill is what makes the methane. And methane, which is natural gas, is a very potent greenhouse gas. So all around, having food scraps in your waste stream is bad news. Whether you're burning it or burying it, it's much better to compost. And this was from the Institute for Local Self-Reliance again, kind of showing how much of municipal solid waste we throw away that could be diverted. So over 50% if you include paper and yard trimmings and things like that. So with that, I am actually going to stop sharing and go to Dr. Becker, Supervisor Becker, tonight to talk a little bit about the efforts underway in Cortland to get curbside compost going. So Dr. Becker, take it away.
Okay, well, welcome everybody, and thank you for having me. I do want to mention that Deputy Supervisor Jim Creighton is on the phone with me and on the Zoom with me. And Jim is all things about sustainable. He's our green guy and the leader of our town board in those efforts. We've been interested in composting for many, many reasons, and a lot of what Courtney just said. It's one of the greenest things we can do, and it's one of the easiest things that we can do, particularly here in Cortland, where Mr. Anthony Carbone has the facility to commercially compost right here in our town. As you were alluding to, the food scraps amounts to about 75% of the weight of the garbage that's collected, because as you mentioned, it's wet. And we pay per ton for dumping our garbage. Is called a tipping fee. And it is actually cheaper to tip or dispose of food scraps than other solid materials, particularly because in Westchester County now we get assistance from the county financially. So it's about $36 a ton for us to dispose of most solid waste, but food scraps going forward will be really about $22 a ton. That's a significant saving. So it makes economic sense for those who are not so concerned about our existential situation we find ourselves in the environment. But those who are environmentally conscious will know that food breaks down naturally into compost, which gardeners like myself call black gold because it's the most nutrient-rich, water-absorbing material you can get. It provides plants with both the nutrients that they need, and also it prevents erosion and it retains water for the soil. So it's a kind of a win-win-win. Gardeners love it. And it's a natural environment for the beneficial microbes that help plants grow. So it's really a terrific material. So it really makes sense to do it. We started about a year ago, similar to Croton, where we have drop-off sites. We gave out about 200 composting pails and kits to get the program started, and then we sold a lot more at our cost. We have two drop-off locations currently, one at the Muriel Morabito Senior Center on Westbrook Drive, and we have a second one at the Cortland train station on Route 9, adjacent to the youth center. And they're both busy. We're filling them each week, and Mr. Carbone comes by and picks them up for us. And it's a saving economically to the town. But I'm really interested in doing this to make it work because Cortland is such a big town. It's 50 square miles. It has so many different villages and hamlets, two villages and a lot of little hamlets and a lot of little areas. You got everything from Montrose, Buchanan, Verplanck, T-Town. You got the area to the north in Continental Village, and people up north are not going to drive all the way down just to drop off their compost. It doesn't make economic sense or time sense. So we want to make it efficient and easy. So I think the only way forward to really make this work is by doing curbside pickup. And so we're looking to establish that program. We've come a long way. We've gotten to the point where we want to do it with an electric vehicle because we want this, to emphasize this is green. And we've identified the appropriate trucks that can do it. Our highway and sanitation team and I have met, and we worked out the routes so that we could do it. And we have a potential grant from Senator Harckham. We thought it was a done deal, but under the new budget and all the restraints and things that are happening in Washington, which affects the flow of money down to New York State, which affects the flow down to our town of Cortland. We will not know if the money's there until about June 6th, I'm told. If the money is there, then the town board will vote to move forward. Our board is a little divided on this issue because some members feel that we won't have enough members of the community to make it worthwhile. But I've been working with Assemblywoman Levenberg, and we're trying to get a grant to get 500 curbside composting bins to encourage people. And my thought is that if you see trucks going around that say composting and you have your neighbors taking out their compost, people are going to wonder what it is, and it will just grow organically. So this is our hope. I've worked with Kathleen, and I mentioned to her about getting Mothers Out Front, who are working on getting a campaign going to collect signatures to convince the town board that this is a worthwhile endeavor and that they'll get and work with us to help encourage composting. I've also reached out to the Hendrick Hudson School District, and they will probably emphasize this among their students because I think if we can get the kids involved, their parents will do it. And finally, we've already have an IMA lined up with the village of Croton, in which we will offer them this vehicle 1 day a week so they too can have curbside composting. My understanding is that the only town that does this so far is by subscription in Scarsdale. But Scarsdale is a 6 square mile community with a fraction of our population. We have 50,000 people, and we're over 50 square miles with over almost 200 miles of routes that our sanitation trucks have to traverse. So we think we could do it if we get the grant money. it's hard to imagine not going ahead since the county is also subsidizing us. And it's actually easier for us to drop the organic waste off at Anthony's facility than it is at the Burns plant because it's closer. So in every way, it makes sense. So we're proceeding. I don't know if Jim wants to add anything to what I said. But we'll get the word out by June 6th, whether we have the funding for both the truck and composting pails to get us going, bins rather. And then I would ask everyone to write to our town board members and encourage them to do the right thing. Jim Creighton, are you there? Okay, so I guess not.
All right. Well, June 6th is my birthday, Supervisor Becker. So I don't want to tell you what I'll wish for because then it won't come true, but you can probably guess.
Awesome. And I am here. I'm sorry, I was trying to unmute, but Dr. Becker handled it perfectly. Courtney, thank you for the presentation as well. We're really well set, and I think if all the grant money comes through, it's a no-brainer whether we have grant money or not. But the grant money makes it something that nobody could say no to. So. So important for our community, so important for all of us. Everybody in Westchester should be thinking this way. So looking forward to answering questions in the Q&A.
Awesome. And yeah, as Dr. Becker said, Scarsdale is the only municipality currently doing curbside. And I dropped a link in the chat, that WCGIS link that is from the county, and it shows how much food scraps are being diverted or picked up in each municipality. And even though Scarsdale's super small, they lead by far any municipality in the county in terms of the amount of food scraps that they're diverting. And it really is because they're just making it that simple. Just like we put out recycling of paper, cardboard, cans, etc. You put out your food scraps, you make it easy, people are going to do it. So I'm sure when you guys get that up and running, you'll blow Scarsdale out of the water. With that, I wanted to turn it over to Kathleen to talk a little bit about the advocacy that Mothers Out Front is doing on this issue.
Hi, yes, thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm substituting here for Donna O'Malley, who really should be the one. She's leading the effort here in Croton. But to support what Dr. Becker is talking about, we wrote a petition for curbside composting, which I'm going to drop in the chat. And it is designed for anybody who lives in the townland of Cortland to sign. We're also we're starting to look at trying to bring an initiative that did start in Croton pre-pandemic, but then unfortunately fell apart. But we've been talking with the village about bringing composting to the high school. And so we're kind of hoping that we're going to be able to make some inroads there to get this going. I should also mention that in addition to the drop-off spots that Supervisor Becker mentioned, Croton does have its own drop-off spot, Lot A, near the train station. So we do have some drop-off composting. I'm also just going to throw in here that I moved from California a couple of years ago, and we've been curbside composting out there for, I don't know, 15 or 20 years. So it's, we have a long history with it. I do think it takes education. I don't think that people really understand exactly what's going on and how to do it, and they think it's messy and dirty, and there are a lot of ways in which that problem gets exacerbated. And so I think that we have to add in an educational component. So I think I agree with Supervisor Becker that it can grow organically, as you say, but I also think that we need to have a proactive educational component to this, that also just indicates how easy it is to do it. And then also there's a question in the chat about non-compostable things dropping into the compost, and that's a complicated issue that can get solved in many ways. But again, education really helps with a situation like that.
Thanks so much, Kathleen. So do drop that link in the chat. So everyone who's a Cortland resident, definitely sign that petition. Let your board know that you want to see curbside in Cortland. And if you're not from Cortland, copy that down and send that to your friends who do live in Cortland so we can show the board that there's a desire for this. And we're going to have Anthony Carbone from Sustainable Materials Management speak in a little while, and he can talk about that contamination issue and how that's worked around. So I just wanted to quickly show, this is Peak Skills new 24/7 365 drop-off location outside the DPW garage off of Lower South Street and Louisa Street. And you can see the sign on the lower left, like for that, public education portion. We also made flyers. I serve on the Conservation Advisory Council for the city, but I am not representing them here tonight. But so there we have flyers in Peekskill of how to do it, what can be included, what can't. And I've been composting in my yard for years now, and actually found in my household that taking the food scraps to the drop off is actually easier, because while it means a ride over there, I don't need to like train my family as much. It's like all food scraps go in. I don't have to be like, well, not the bones and not that like oil, just this. And, I don't need to like give them as many instructions. So in that way, it's easier for me. Next, I would like to ask Sue to come off of mute and talk to us. Sue has spoken before at our Zero Waste Task Force meetings because she's a great squeaky wheel down in Yonkers and got the city of Yonkers to do their pilot curbside pickup at her apartment complex. And she's going to talk to us about that. And I do have the video in the slide, Sue, and hopefully it will work.
Okay.
Do you want me to play the video first, or do you want to talk about it first?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know what pictures you have. The ones I
Oh,
sent.
it's not, is it not showing?
Okay.
Sorry.
I'll just say that we had about 10 people in our building of 206 apartments who were composting, and we were bringing our Yonkers compost or food scraps over to various locations. Sometimes we went to Greenberg, sometimes we went to Hastings. And so we just were doing it like that, which was very haphazard. And we were asking if we could actually pay to bring, to have someone pick up and take it to Yonkers. And the city of Yonkers said, no, they wouldn't allow any commercial vehicle to come that wasn't from Yonkers. So we could bring it, individual people could bring it, but not a commercial vendor, right? Thanks, my husband's. Anyway, so finally, having good connections with the Department of Public Works, I got wind that they want to do some curbside pickup and they're looking for a pilot project. And I said, well, that sounds perfect for us. And so that started in May of 2023. The pilot project was, we did a walkthrough with our superintendent, and it was, it's hard to see these pictures, but I don't think these pictures are very helpful to people. So I don't, but this is on the right, you see the large bins, and we had one put in our garage area. And then our staff takes it out to the curb, and it's picked up Tuesdays and Fridays. And we started out with 10 people, and a little by little, word of mouth. We gave out free kits from Yonkers. They provided us with free kits. which was a large green bin and a smaller countertop bin, which you can't really see there. But yeah, so that's pretty much it. And we started out with just a few residents, and we had meetings, and we showed people what to do and how easy it was. And people said, "Oh, it's going to smell. It's going to be terrible." But it turned out that we got more and more people, really neighbors talking to neighbors and talking about how much we would be reducing the amount of trash that we would put in our compact system. And our compactor, and all, like you said, the wet trash just takes up so much room and it's kind of messy. So we started out with 10 and now we're up to 95 families doing the compost. And one remark from the Department of Public Works, after the first maybe 3 months, the Greystone building had done more quantity of food scraps than all of Yonkers had done. So I think that the supervisor from Cortland who spoke about curbside pickup being the key, yes, it is, because when you make it easy for people, people are more apt to do it. And going over to Sawmill River Road with our trash, that was just not doable for senior citizens. And now we make it as easy as possible. And we even have a committee. If a senior citizen can't bring their bin down to the larger bin, we have a group of people who volunteer to do it for them. So it's really a win-win. Last year on Earth Day, the Westchester County gave us an Eco Award for our efforts, and we were very proud of that, and we have it on display in our lobby. And the board used to not be so supportive of it, and we're a co-op building. So now the board, I have to say, is almost 100% in the composting camp. So it was a struggle, but it was worth it. George,
That's
want to add
great.
anything? No. Okay.
Let me see
My
if the
husband is the
video.
one who drags it down to the garage, but
This bin gets wheeled to our curbside by our staff and picked up by Yonkers Department of Public Works in a hydraulic.
Are you hearing it?
no, I can't hear.
It was just Sue narrating, like showing what's inside. So
bin
it looks
Oh.
like a lot of the
to
residents use the
curbside
compostable bags,
staff
and it keeps
Yes.
it very
and
neat and
picked
clean.
up by
Oh,
Yonkers.
well, yes, because you're
Yeah.
dumping your countertop
Yeah.
bag. Oh, that's a
Awesome.
video. Okay.
Yeah, that was,
But I
you
really-
sent it.
What I really wanted to show was the truck that picks up. It is a very, it's a complicated pickup. It's a hydraulic, has a hydraulic motor, and it has to go straight up. And that's a very heavy bin. Once it's filled, it's, it goes right up, and then it goes right over the top. So it's really quite amazing, and we should have more. We should have more of those.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sue. All right, so I think next on our agenda is Anthony Carbone from Sustainable Waste Management. Materials Management. I keep saying it incorrectly, and I'm sorry for that, Anthony. So Anthony, I have toured his facility in Cortland, and it's amazing. It smells less than the incinerator for sure. And I think there was a question, Anthony, in the chat. I'll just prepare you to answer it. That someone was asking, what do you do with contaminants, like stuff that's not actually compostable? And I know he handles all of that because I got to take the tour. So maybe that is something WAS can do as an actual field trip to your facility, and then we can all see exactly how it works. So take it away, Anthony. Thank you.
All right, so yeah, I'll touch on that first. I do have some slides that I'll share, but I'll touch on the contamination issue first because it's really something that's not measurable in the amount of material that we take in. It's less than 0.5%. It's the material that we're taking in and the material that we're pulling out as contamination. It's it's, you know, there, yes, there is some contamination, mistakes are made, but we screen everything to a dime sized and smaller. So anything that's a dime sized and bigger, we're screening out, and then we're picking out any contamination that is in it at that point. Um, but everybody that is actually participating in the composting efforts now are people that have bought in, and the material that we get is actually very good. I'm very happy with the quality of material that we're getting in from the Westchester County program, from our commercial customers. Um, it's just, it's just immaculate material that we're getting in, and the material you make is only as good as the material you take in. So the question in the comments was a very good question, because if you're not going to be able to sell compost if people can't grow anything in it. So the compost that we make, every batch that we make, we send it out to Penn State's agricultural lab. uh, we get a 9-page analytical from Penn State, and we post that on our website so everybody can see, what it is that they're actually putting onto their soil, into their garden, into their plants. It's out there for everybody to see, and we think that's important. But if you want, I'm going to just breeze through a few slides just in case anybody is not familiar with how the composting process works. I'm just going to breeze by these really quickly. So we use the aerated
You're
static. Can
not
everybody see
seeing
that?
the slides yet. I don't think you hit share.
Oh, hold on one second. Sorry about that. Okay, how about now?
No. Yes. Now we're seeing it.
Okay. Okay, so we use the aerated static pile method, which the mixture of food scraps and yard waste are placed on these perforated pipes, and we blow air into the pile. That's roughly how we do it. We blow air into the pile for 5 minutes every half hour. It's very low energy. These are the materials that we accept. Basically, it's everything. If you can eat it, if it was once alive, we accept it. We try and make it nice and easy for everybody. Like Courtney said, you can take your entire plate at the dinner table, scrape the entire plate into your compostable, however, your bin, your bag, whatever, and we can take it from there. We mix it with tree debris. We grind down tree wood into these wood chips that are not uniform. It's important that they're not uniform. You want air to get through this pile. Air is what's making the composting work. So this is just a miniature compost pile, but you're able to see like the entire pile, like how we mix it and what it looks like once it's mixed. There's the air blower on the right-hand side of the screen that blows air into the pile. The actual process itself, once you start blowing air into the pile and the pile has got oxygen going into it, the temperatures will rapidly rise in temperature. We're dealing with temperatures around 160 degrees for about 45 days. So in that process, you're killing all foodborne illnesses, weed seeds, and it's basically just reestablishing all the soil microbes in that process. So on the left side of the screen, you can see one of our active compost piles at 150 degrees, and then once the compost, we leave that thermometer in there for the entire month. Once that temperature starts to drop, we know that the composting activity is slowing down, and the process is almost complete. We let the compost sit for another 30 days to cool off. Once it's cool, we'll pass it through our screener. Here on the left, this yellow machine. We screen everything to, right now we're screening everything to a 1/2 inch and smaller, which is, dime size approximately. And the finished product you get is compost right on the right-hand side of the screen. It's very low tech. It's like Dr. Becker mentioned, all the benefits of using compost. A lot of people who are using our compost are gardeners, and they just love it. Their plants react well to it. It's not miracle growing your plants. It's not just putting a chemical fertilizer on your lawn or on your flower beds or your vegetable garden, and then when it rains, it runs off and gets into the waterway. Compost, it's just a stable product, and the nutrients are in the product waiting for the nutrients are in the product, just waiting for the roots to take them up whenever they need to. So it's not forcing a chemical fertilizer on your plant. You're just putting it in its natural environment. There's organic content in the compost, and if the plant needs it, it's there for it to be taken up. So it's a very natural process. It's very low energy to make the compost. And I just, the odors, if you're composting right, like Courtney said, if you're composting right, the odors, if you're handling the material when it comes in right away, it really doesn't smell at all. The burn plant smells way worse. A lot of times when I give tours, I actually leave food scraps that were, just recently dumped on the floor just to show the whole process where, and sometimes that can make, a little bit of a smell because it's just the food scraps sitting there. But, I like to have that visual for people when they come on the tour to see the food scraps just sitting there. And then we mix it right away. And once it's mixed, the smell goes away. And it's just, we've been operating for 5 years, haven't had any neighborhood complaints. We are sited. Where our site is. We are over a mile from the nearest residence, but where our neighbors are our town's DPW yard, a fueling station. So if you site a compost facility properly and you operate it properly, you really plop them in anywhere. We're operating on less than 2 acres of, where the footprint of our compost facility. We're operating on less than 2 acres. It's not a very big site at all, but our process can be replicated, I would say, in pretty much any town if they had the wherewithal. It's just very doable. One thing that we're seeing is that we wanted to do was grow slowly. We didn't want to get in over our heads and take too much material in, not be able to do it the right way, and then give composting a bad stigmatized look on things. So we've grown slowly. Every year we've pretty much doubled our intake until this past year. So we started out taking in, the first year we were only open for September to December. We took in 200 cubic yards of food scraps. Year 2, we took in 800 cubic yards. Year 3, 1,460 cubic yards. Year 4, 2,460 cubic yards. And last year we took in 3,000 cubic yards. The reason why we want to have that slow growth is because you can only take in so much compost, food scraps, without having to sell the compost. So you can't have a log jam in your process. It's like an assembly line. If you make too much compost and you can't sell it or get rid of it, donate it, however you have to do it, if the compost backs up, you're going to just hit a log jam in your process. So are basically having to develop a market for compost while we're doing this whole outreach for educating customers on what we can take, what we can't take, the contamination. But now we have to educate people on the benefits of using compost, because if we can't get rid of all the compost, it's just going to create, like I said, a logjam in that process. So we've had slow growth on the intake. We're also having slow growth on the outtake. And it's, we're in Westchester. There's only so much, land, agriculture that people are doing. Our nearest competitor is up in Ulster County. Very farm, there's farms everywhere in Ulster County, and, they move 10 times the amount of compost that we can. Just because of where they are. They're in a farming community. So we have to develop these markets. So we're very particular on the material we take in to make sure it's good material, and then we're trying to develop these markets to make sure that we could sell and distribute all the compost and every year, especially in the Northeast where it's not a year-round growing season. So we get our spring rush and we get our fall rush, and then we have to have enough storage capacity to make it through the winter, with storing material before we can start moving it again. So that's everything I have, but
Yeah, well,
happy to take
you're
any questions in the
generating
chat.
a bunch of questions in the chat. So, one question was, how does one arrange a tour?
Oh, they could just
Oh.
very easy. Email me at Anthony I'll put my email in the chat, but email me at Anthony@smmcompost.com and we can arrange a tour.
Awesome. And then Gloria asked, are there landscapers that are dropping off lawn clippings? And her worry was about like pesticides. Like, how do you know lawn?
Yeah, so the
yard
only
waste?
so we don't take grass. Our nitrogen source, and if getting into the science of everything, our nitrogen source is the food scraps, where grass is heavy in nitrogen. That's what heats up the piles. So we don't take any grass. The only thing we take in are trees. So we'll take in the trees if someone's cutting down a tree, and we bring in a third party that grinds up those trees to make the uh, wood chips. So the only carbon that we're mixing with the food scraps is from trees.
Thank you. And then Victoria, you had your hand up. Did your
Yeah,
question get
okay.
answered?
I was just gonna type it out. So I noticed when Sue was telling her story that there were all these compostable bags. They're green, they're light green. I didn't see a single bag in any of your scraps. Do you get those? Do you have to pull those out? Just
So
curious.
what we do is most of those green bags are compostable. There's an organization, BPI, that if you're interested in purchasing those bags, BPI is a good authority on saying if that bag is compostable or not. But we do see some mimicked bags, for lack of a better term, where they say biodegradable, not compostable. And all biodegradable means is that it'll biodegrade in some period of time. Could be 100 years, could be 500 years. Compostable means it'll break down in 30 days or less in an industrial setting. So we get a lot of those green compostable bags. But what we do is we'll pull those out after one go round. Once they come off the screen, if they haven't composted by that point, we'll pull them out, and they're going to go. The plastic bags will go into the recycling, because at that point we can't recognize whether it has that compostable certification on it or not, because it's been through the process. So it's just impossible for us to tell. So at that point, if it hadn't broken down in the first go round, we're pulling it out at that point.
Another question from the chat, and I do see other hands raised, so I'll try and get through everybody. From John Rath, if the program takes off, like composting food scraps recycling throughout the county, Anthony, can your facility keep up with the volume, and can the market expand enough? And so I'll let Anthony answer, but also Westchester County, just in, I forget if it was 2024, I think, set aside like $1.3 million for a pilot compost program and facility to try and judge that. Like like what would it take for the whole of the county to be doing food scraps recycling? But Anthony, you know more
So
about this. So go
just
ahead.
last year alone, we operated at 60% of our permit. So we have a significant room to expand, but I'm, I'm capped by, the amount of land we have. If Westchester County was to come online and internalize all their food scraps and do it themselves, I could easily replace it with commercial customers of my own, on our sanitation company, because New York State is actually expanding the food scrap and recycling law come next January. So it's, I would love for there to be a compost facility in every town, because that's really doing it local is the best way, and not having to transport anything anywhere, putting the soil right back in the town where it was consumed. That's, that's the best thing. But, if you have to travel 30 minutes from Yonkers to Cortland Manor, that's fine. But, the best thing is to do is to, where it's generated, do it right then and there. It can be done locally. It can be done without odors. The county even has their demonstration facility in Valhalla called Composted, where, they give tours. It's really more aimed at, showing how you could do it on a very small footprint. I think that site is less than an acre, so it can be done on a large scale. It can be done on a small scale. And there's plenty of material to go around. So we can't take all of it. If, it would just, it would just wouldn't we wouldn't be able to do it, on our own. But there's plenty of food scraps to go around. So if the county wanted to expand something, or that would be fine with us.
So I want to, Supervisor Becker's had his hand up for a while, so I want to go to him. But then we've also been joined by County Legislator Emiliano Lai, and I do want to give her a chance to speak because she had some updates for us from the county. So Supervisor Becker, do you want to go ahead?
Sure. I just want to, I'll say two things. I was going to say one. The first thing is that Mr. Carbone gave us a wonderful tour of his facility. So if anyone's interested in taking a virtual tour, if they go to the Town of Cortland website, the video of Anthony and I walking around and him explaining the entire process is available. It was professionally produced, and Anthony does a very good job. So if anyone wants to view it, just go to Town of Cortland and go under videos and you'll find it. And the second thing is I want to give a shout out to Emiliana, who's joining us, who's really been a co-warrior with Jim Creighton and myself in trying to get this going. She's really been advocating to our board. So I'll let her speak for herself. Thank you.
Awesome. Legislator Lai, welcome.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. Becker. I'm so happy you're all doing the work. I'm just happy to advocate there. So forgive me for being late as well. Got stuck on a work call. I'm not sure if it was mentioned, but yes, the county did vote on an over $1 million bond this past year to study creating our own county-owned composting facility. So that's one thing. And the other piece that I wanted to note was I just introduced legislation just about a week ago. So it's just legislation right now. It's not a law yet, right? How a bill becomes a law. Just legislation right now. It's called the Shelf to Soil Act. And it would require all grocery stores to provide commercially compostable bags at produce areas and at the poultry areas, so that rather than using a plastic bag in those areas, they offer commercially compostable bags to create this synergy between all of our composting programs that the majority of municipalities in Westchester have opted into the county's program for drop-off locations and getting the reduced rate on all of the food waste there. And the idea really just, came to me organically, pun intended. I was coming home from the grocery store and putting groceries away and then, tying up my compost bin on my counter. And I thought to myself, why the heck am I bringing home a plastic bag that I can't use for compost on my kitchen counter when we can just, when they can do the right thing and provide commercially compostable bags. Obviously, a lot of these retailers won't do the right thing without being required to do the right thing, so we might need to require it out of them. One already does, apparently. Trader Joe's already offers commercially compostable bags at those places. And so we might be bringing them in as offering an example of how they do it, and that it can be done even in the smaller grocery stores. As you know, their footprints is a lot smaller than like ShopRite or Stop and Shop or those big places. So if a smaller grocery store can do it, I don't want to hear complaints from the big grocery stores that they can't. So the bill was just introduced. Definitely want to get letters of support from WAS and any other organization that's on here hearing this right now. If you support this idea that grocery stores should be offering commercially compostable bags rather than plastic bags, get in touch with me. I'd love to get a letter of support from you so we can move this bill forward. Thank you.
Yes, that'd be amazing. I'm sure we've got a lot of groups represented on here that would love to support that. Let's see. I want to go back to more questions in the chat. Let's see. Sorry, I have to go way back. This chat is really hopping. So Joe Montori asked, is every participant a town? Are there any individual membership programs? Basically, how is it paid for? So Anthony, I think you guys did do individual signups for drop-offs initially, right?
Yeah. So
Or
when we first opened up, this was before the town had signed on to the the county program, we basically offered something similar to that, where Cortland residents could come and drop off. We were doing it for free. It was just to get people to start composting. We had at one point over 100 people had signed up uh, to just basically just to sign up and say, hey, I'm going to come and drop off my food scraps. They got a list of what they could and couldn't do. And then maybe a year after that, maybe it was a couple of years after that, the town of Cortland had their 2 sites opened up, which we're kind of off the beaten path a little bit. So, that helped the Cortland residents do that, to drop off, whether, a little closer to their home, because it's such a big town. But then we expanded it to, if you were in Peekskill, you could come and drop off. We weren't charging anything, so it didn't matter. We opened it up to people from Peekskill. Then we just said, all right, it's anybody. People were coming down from Cold Spring and Garrison. It was on their way to work. They said, hey, we just drop off on our way? And yeah, absolutely. And then we have people from far as Poughkeepsie who work at IBM in Yorktown. We're on their way down. We're dropping off their food scraps at our facility. It was to us, it was about getting the material, not about charging charging people to drop off. That wasn't the goal. So we think that was a good way of jump starting the program and getting it out in the lexicon and hear people talking about it and make it easy for people. And now the town has 2 additional drop offs that they're 24/7. Anybody can go and drop off. Peekskill just expanded theirs to 24/7. As soon as they expanded, they went from 1 pail a week to 4 pails a week. So they quadrupled their amount that they were collecting in Peekskill just by having it open, 24/7 instead of, for that few hours on a Saturday. So
Thank you. Board Member Creighton, you have your hand up.
Thank you, Courtney, and thank you, Anthony. And you're exactly right. I think the easier we make this for everybody, the better it's going to be. I loved seeing Peekskill make this 24/7 accessible to all their residents. It made all the difference in the world. In Portland, we talked about limiting it, but then you need staff to man it and to watch out. And ultimately, people who are doing this are doing the right thing. They're the people who are most interested in compost and following the rules. And I thank you for the issue on the plastic bags, because I know it was so much easier for me to buy the compostable bags, but I recognize it's such a bad idea to have to buy them. We're better off just having the containers and dumping them. But I'm glad to hear how you guys are pulling those bags when they're not breaking down out of the waste stream, regardless of whether they say they're compostable or not. I want to thank Anthony for making available to the town of Cortland residents. We had, I think it was about 20 yards of material. It might have been 40 yards of material of compost for Cortland residents who wanted to come and supplement their gardens. So that was awesome to be able to take the food scraps that we've been dumping there over the last few months and actually feel that black dirt in our hands and get it into our gardens. So I think that's what all of us want to do. And Sue, your experience in Yonkers is amazing. I think the idea is the easier we make it, the better. So that's why we're really striving for curbside, because not everybody's going to do the right thing, but we have to assume that everybody wants to do the right thing. And if we educate them well, and people have the opportunity, and it's just, look, a lot of people are busy and they don't always get a chance to. I have a backyard composter that sits there and doesn't get used very much, but man, I am over dropping stuff off on Westbrook Drive twice a week, and I'm so happy for it. My kids have now been trained very well. Nothing goes in the garbage, and when I dig into the garbage, what's this? They get it. They know they got caught. But we'll all get there. We all have a responsibility to do better, and the easier we make it for our residents, the more we can get closer to zero waste. So I want to thank you, Courtney, for everybody who is on this, who cares so deeply. I am over right next to the waste plant, the burn plant. I wanted to have that in my background, but can't really see it. But I'm over at the river. We have to get closer to zero waste, and ultimately we'll get there. And I can't wait to see when we don't need this plant anymore.
Yes, absolutely. So we're getting close to time and we're not going to get through all the questions in the chat. But we do have comments from Cortland residents that are excited about the possibility of curbside composting. Emmett had a great question that if we stay on after 8:30, I'm happy to discuss, which is how do you educate people and get adoption? But I'd like a quick answer from Anthony just about one more question, which is another science type question. Jane was asking, she said food composting or any composting gives off methane. How is your facility handling the outgassing? But my understanding is that the methane comes from anaerobic rotting, like buried food waste in a landfill, and not the kind of aerobic composting that you're doing with the airflow that you mentioned in your presentation. So could you talk about that briefly again?
Yeah, that's exactly right. So we do the aerated static pile method. So when we blow air to that pile, it is staying aerobic. So it's it's not like when you put stuff in a landfill and it's starved of oxygen. That breakdown where it's starved of oxygen is an anaerobic breakdown, which releases methane. So there are gases and things released in the composting process, but they're less harmful for the environment than in an anaerobic process. So if anybody was to come to our facility, it's basically heat. We're releasing heat and steam in the wintertime. When you see our composting piles, it's there's steam coming up from the piles. It's not gases coming off our piles. It's just the heat from our piles hitting the cold air. But yeah, because we keep our thing aerobic, that's what keeps those beneficial bacteria, those microorganisms, keeps them alive and reproducing and doing their thing in the decomposition of all the food scraps that are in our piles.
Thank you. So because we're running out of time, I do want to mention, and Lila, if you're still on and could drop the links in the chat for us, I would appreciate it. We are going to talk about our action portion of the night. So we've seen a lot of excitement about curbside. We've talked about how much more efficient and how much more scraps get diverted from the waste stream when we have curbside. We have talked with Westchester County and told them that the county can mandate food scraps recycling if they want to. And sorry, I'm just gonna drop these links in the chat because I don't know that Lila is hearing me. So our action for tonight, so the county could mandate food scraps recycling if they wanted to, and they could start the push to expand curbside pickup. And if we want to not continue to rely on the oldest trash incinerator, or one of the oldest trash incinerators in the entire country, and all the fracked gas it uses to burn our food scraps, we need to be doing this. So in the chat, I dropped a link to a Google Doc that says sample letter for email. If you click on that, it'll open a Google Doc and you can just copy paste the email addresses, copy paste the message, feel free to personalize it, sign your name, and send that to these folks. So these are our key decision makers and experts. So our county executive and deputy county executive, the Department of Environmental Facilities, Westchester County, remember, all of the municipalities we've been talking about are part of that municipal waste district. So a lot of this stuff is done at the county level. So you could email the Department of Environmental Facilities, the chair of the Parks and Environment Committee, the chair of the Board of Legislators, District 1 legislator Colin Smith, who represents my district that includes the incinerator. Emiliana Ulay was on tonight. She gets enough emails. You can leave her off. And then Peter McCart, the Director of Energy Conservation and Sustainability. So please take that bit of collectivism for us to get a systemic solution, because you're seeing, like, if every municipality is having to kind of figure this out on their own and get this going, it's a much slower process. But you can see tonight, just from the discussions of the different municipalities, you know, Peekskill saw Cortland's drop off 24/7. So we were able to say, oh, Cortland's got it working, Peekskill should do it too. And we can see Scarsdale's having a lot of success with curbside. So Cortland can say, Scarsdale's doing it, we should do curbside. So we're learning from each other, but if the county could just come together and give these solutions, that would be the way to go. So please take that bit of activism. And then I also included a link if you want to reach out to your municipality and find out what opportunities there are for you to recycle your food scraps. There's a link to the county's website that includes all of the municipalities and how to and whether they participate in that residential food scraps recycling program, and then links to each municipality's website of, like, where is your drop-off location, all of those things. All that information is there. A very cool link that is the Westchester GIS that shows how much food scraps municipalities are diverting. And I mentioned earlier, even though Scarsdale is teeny tiny, it is doing the best in terms of the amount of food scraps that are being diverted. And that is because they make it easy for people to just put it out on the curb. And then the other question, and this addresses something that came up in the chat about, like, not having enough compost. The county is doing a rain barrel and compost bin sale, but also a compost give back. And so that link is also in the chat. And you can get at cost a yard compost bin, a rain barrel, or the toters like Sue showed in her images, or like the little countertop ones, and the bags that are actually compostable, all at cost, thanks to the Office of Sustainability from the county. So the link to that is in the chat. Ironically, the give back is at Sprout Brook Park, at the foot of that mountain of toxic ash. So let us use that park for something better than storing our ash. And then a couple of events we have coming up. Hastings Spring Thing was rescheduled because of weather. So WAS will be in Hastings on the 8th of June. And then on the 14th, we will be at Hudson River Fest in the activist area with a lot of other awesome organizations. This is like the reincarnation of the Clearwater Festival. So lots of family-friendly activities, lots of great music. So come and find us there. If you want to volunteer with WAS to table at any of these events, reach out. We have a core group that meets weekly. We're always looking for new folks that want to get more involved and help come up with these actions, draft the letters, help plan these task force meetings and all of that. You can reach out to us via email at waspeekskill@gmail.com, or come and talk to us when we're at these various events. And I think, and then our next task force meeting is Wednesday, June 11th at 7:30 p.m. And our topic is the cumulative impacts law. So that is a state law that is open for public comment, talking about how the state considers the impacts on communities that have multiple sources of pollutants, and like environmental justice communities like Peekskill. So this is great for municipal officials, elected officials, as well as various organizations to come learn about what the law says, and then how to get involved in submitting and participating in the public comment on it to make sure that it properly represents the county. And with that, I want to officially end and thank everyone for their time. Many thanks to all of our speakers and our elected officials, Supervisor Becker, Board Member Creighton, Legislator Lai, for coming on and for all the work that they're doing, as well as Anthony and Sue and Kathleen for coming on to talk about their food scraps and take us on our virtual field trip. And while the official meeting will end, I'm happy to leave the Zoom open for continued discussion because I know the chat was really hopping. So with that, thank you all for coming, and hopefully we'll see you in June. Have a wonderful night.
Bye-bye, ma'am.
I'll stay on for a minute if anyone has any questions.